What's up again, guys? Brian here at 3TR, and I have another one of my own personal top 10s list to share with you guys today. And today I'll be sharing with you my own list of the top 10 most underrated movies that I've seen. I'd also like to thank the person who requested this top 10s list video, going by the name of Boobop1987. And to start off really simple with my number 10 is a movie which I'm pretty sure not too many of you guys have seen it. It's gotten a lot of crap back in the day, but I'm willing to defend it to this day. And that is Kevin Costner's Waterworld. Now I know what you guys are thinking. What? Waterworld? Okay. Now the reason why, in my opinion, this movie is so notoriously dubbed as a bad film is because it's, to this day, one of the movie's biggest box office bombs. Because at the time of this movie's release, it actually had the record for the highest budget for a film. And when it got to the box office, it didn't really quite deliver. But I don't think that makes this movie a bad movie. I think it has a lot of really compelling ideas. For one, Kevin Costner's character kind of plays as a guy who apparently was affected by some chemicals, and therefore he has gills which enable him to breathe underwater. And it's basically the story of him hanging out with these two groups of people that have their own little island out in the middle of the ocean. And they're trying to find land, and this one little girl has this little mark on the back of her neck, which in many ways is some type of key in order to find dry land. And I think it had a lot of really great solid action. I liked how everything was practical, and that's something that a lot of these older movies don't get credit for, is that these days, if they wanted to make a movie like this now, they would use CGI just to do it the cheap way. But the fact that this movie actually had, in my opinion, a solid cast, a solid script, and it had a lot of really great use of practical effects, in my opinion, makes it a really good film and a good watch. And just the fact that it bombed at the box office doesn't make it a bad movie, so that's why it's number 10 on my list. Going on into number 9 is one of Liam Neeson's older films. I mean, before his Taken days, he did do a series of, in my opinion, really good films. But I think one of the best films that he did prior to the Taken films is a movie called Darkman. Darkman tells the story of a scientist who's working on making this type of reconstructed faces so people don't have to hide their burns, but unfortunately his research is destroyed and his face is badly scarred, and he's able to salvage some of his own equipment, and he's actually able to build faces but can only last for a certain amount of time. And he pretty much spends the whole movie trying to kill the people responsible for scarring his face. And there's a really good moment at the end of the film where he's talking to his love interest, and he's explaining exactly why they can't be together. And I think the line kind of goes something like this. He's like, when I was working on the mask, I thought it wasn't going to be such a big deal, but as I realized, as I was working on the mask, the man underneath the mask was changing. And that's why we can't be together, because I'm no longer the man you fell in love with. And then he disappears, and he has the face of Bruce Campbell, which I thought was a really interesting cameo. But if you have not seen this film, it's a really good watch. I wouldn't necessarily say it's like, a hero film. He kind of plays like an anti-hero because he does go around killing people. But I think the character development and the change in Liam Neeson's character is really worth watching, which is why it's number 9 on my list. Going on into number 8, we have a movie which I'm sure not a lot of you have seen, but it's Kurt Russell's Soldier. Now, the plot to this film is that Kurt Russell plays as a soldier character who is pretty much groomed from birth to be a top-tier soldier. Pretty much Spartan style. He's taken from birth, and from birth until he's adult, he's been trained to be nothing but a soldier. He's been trained to kill and not be a man of many words. However, one day, him and his regiment have to confront a group of genetically engineered soldiers, and when he's beaten in a particular chain fight, he's then dumped on a planet, presumed dead, and has to spend his time, or the remainder of the movie, hanging around people who aren't soldiers, who are just trying to survive. And over the course of the movie, he kind of learns how to live a life outside of being a soldier. And then when the group of soldiers that kind of technically, supposedly killed him, arrived on the planet, he has to defend his new home. Now, what I really liked about Kurt Russell's performance is that he really doesn't talk much. And I think that adds a lot of personality to the character, because that shows you exactly just how in-depth and just brutal his training was. He was not meant to be a man to think on his own. And now that he's here on this planet with these people, he now has this opportunity. And although by the end of the film he doesn't really change his personality. You can certainly see that he is now a person who can now think for himself and is more than just a mindless soldier. And I think that is really one of the best messages about being in any form of the military branch. It's like, don't just do things because you're told. Actually think about it. Use your moral senses. And I think this movie really projects that a lot better than most movies do when it comes to these type of soldier stories. So that's why it's on this list. Going on to number 7 is a movie that a lot of people also probably haven't seen, or it doesn't even get talked about much, and it's a Nicolas Cage film. I know that these days Nicolas Cage does get a lot of crap for being a bad actor, but I don't think he's a bad actor at all. In fact, I'm actually a fan of Nicolas Cage, and I think one of the best films that he ever made was Windtalkers. It's a period piece taking place during World War II, during the Pacific Campaign, and what happens is Nicolas Cage plays as a soldier who was injured and somewhat lost the hearing in his ear, and he's trying to return back to the front lines, and he's part of the main invasion force to the islands of Saipan. And his objective is to pretty much protect this code talker who is using the Navajo language in order to relay artillery fire. And it's sort of a moral story of letting go of the past, because his entire regiment, his entire original team was killed and he was the only one to survive. And he has to choose between doing the right thing and making difficult choices, and it really does show you the horrors of war. Now, I'm not going to say it's quite as good as movies like, say, Black Hawk Down, or one of my all-time personal favorite war movies, Saving Private Ryan, but it does do a good job of actually showing the reality of having to make a personal choice in the middle of a war zone. And I think Nicolas Cage's performance here is absolutely phenomenal. Not good enough for an award, but for a period piece like this, I think he did a really damn good job. Going on into number 6 is Hugh Jackman's Van Helsing. Now, I'm really confused why a lot of people didn't like this film, because I actually had the honor of seeing this in theaters with my mom, and we both really enjoyed it. I mean, I own my own personal copy of it, and I think it did a really good job of actually bringing together Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, and actually telling it in a way that was very believable. It's like every monster had a purpose for being there. You found out why Dracula was technically the main threat. You found out why the Wolfman could actually seem to be a very serious threat to Dracula, and you saw how Frankenstein played into Dracula's plans. And I really don't understand where all the hate came from, because I thought that even Hugh Van Helsing's weapons, I thought were pretty cool. I mean, the man has a machine gun like crossbow. He's got these little blade things that worked really well in the opening fight against Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and I think the rest of the cast did a really great job of what they were given. I think this is, outside of the Wolverine films, I personally said this is one of Hugh Jackman's better films, so I don't understand where all this hate came from, because it was good enough to have its own little walkthrough ride at Universal Studios for a time, and heck, I had the honor of being able to go through that ride while it was still there, and I thought it was a lot of fun, so that's why it's on this list. Going on into number 5 is Arnold Schwarzenegger's Jingle All The Way. This is one of my all-time favorite Christmas movies. I would probably rank it, if I ever do like a top 10 Christmas movies list, it might be number 2 or 3. But I think overall it kind of teaches you a lesson about Christmas shopping. Now, I've been working in retail for some time, and there's a clear fact of why it's always best to plan ahead. And basically, Arnold Schwarzenegger plays a dad who has to recover this toy, Turbo Man, which is apparently at this time the hottest selling Christmas toy ever, and he pretty much has to find one of these toys on Christmas Eve, which is probably a nightmare to find any popular toy. I mean, could you guys remember how crazy it was to try to find a Nintendo Wii when it was really popular before the Christmas days? Kind of the same situation. And I think the moral lesson that I got from this is the importance of establishing connections with your children and keeping your promises, because that's one of the main themes as throughout this film, is that he has trouble keeping promises to his son Jamie. And, when he finally realizes just how important it is to him and how much it will affect Jamie growing up, he does a pretty spontaneous thing, kind of accidentally, and ends up being Turbo Man at this parade, and I think that's like one of the best Christmas scenes I've ever seen in a Christmas movie. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out around the Christmas time, and I believed it was on Netflix for a time, so hopefully when Christmas comes around this December, if it's on Netflix or if you can find any way to find it, definitely check this movie out, because it's a good watch. Going on to number 4, I picked The Lost World of Jurassic Park. Now, a lot of people say that there's only one good Jurassic Park film, but I disagree. I think the second one, The Lost World, was also really good. I wouldn't say it's as good as the first Jurassic Park, but it does have a lot of really cool themes and cool action scenes that, in my opinion, actually surpass the original film. What happens is it pretty much follows the character of Malcolm from the first film, who was the kind of like the panic skepticist. And he has to apparently return to Jurassic Park because I believe his ex-wife or his ex-girlfriend has gone there for research to protect the dinosaurs there. And there's a bunch of bounty hunters, and they're pretty much trying to capture, now this is the dumbest part, people trying to capture dinosaurs and bring them to the San Diego Zoo. And I think the one conversation that I've always had with my mom is, whose bright idea was it to take a T-Rex and bring it to the zoo and think you could train this thing? And then you have like this really cool scene with the T-Rex is just walking through, I believe, San Diego or San Francisco, one of the two, and just starts tearing shit up. And it's just an all-around enjoyable film. With, I think, one of the most, like, in my opinion, one of the most suspenseful scenes where the main love interest of Malcolm is like falls down, like hits this glass, and like she can't move, and like it's breaking apart. I think that whole scene, in my opinion, is like my favorite scene out of any of the Jurassic Park films. It is like tense from beginning to end. So if you haven't seen that film, why haven't you? It's a pretty damn good film. Number 3, we are now getting into really dangerous territory, and I picked Independence Day. I don't care what any of you people say. You can, whatever you say about Roland Emmerich's movies, I think this was one of his all-time best ones. I mean, it was a very believable alien invasion film. I think this makes the alien invasion from Avengers look like absolute garbage, because this actually shows you just how much devastation out of being intergalactical race of aliens could do to our planet with our insufficient technology. I mean, they are able to wipe out entire cities, and they're trying to pretty much take our natural resources. So this is in many ways a much better version of Battle Los Angeles, in my opinion. And I think it had a really great cast. And in my opinion, it has, some people call it corny, I think it has one of the best inspirational speeches I've ever heard in a movie. I mean, I'm not too big on like going into fights, but if like my significant leader gave a speech like that to me, I'll be pumped up to fight to the death. So, you know, I think the movie still holds up to today, and I think there's even rumors that they're working on a second one. Whether or not Will Smith is going to be in it, I don't think he is, but heck, I'm actually pumped up to see how they could continue the story 20 years later, or I believe it will be 20 years. Yeah, I'm pretty sure about that. Going on into number 2 is a movie that, you know, is in kind of a club that has been notorious for being bad, but I'm defending this film to the day I die, and that is 1995's Mortal Kombat movie. I don't know what people's problem is, but if any movie video game got it right, it was this one. And heck, this is one of Paul W.S. Anderson films, and I'm hating on this guy because he has screwed the Resident Evil films so hard. But this was one of his, in my opinion, best films because it was simple. The man took a simple concept from a game that doesn't have much story to it to begin with, brought it into live action, gave each of the characters slight background, established certain connections, and filled it with fights. No, doesn't have the best acting, and no, the story itself isn't very complex, but it doesn't need to be. This is, in my opinion, the prime example of what a movie video game should be. It shouldn't try to add shit out that is not necessary, and it shouldn't try to basically take characters which don't need to be in there. And this movie actually managed to add all the Mortal Kombat characters at that point in time, and I think that's an amazing achievement. And in my opinion, the fight between Johnny Cage and Scorpion to this day remains one of my all-time favorite fights in a movie, period. And it is, in my opinion, the best movie video game we've ever had. That might change with Michael Fassbender's Assassin's Creed, but, you know, I still gotta see a trailer for that so I can get a clear idea of what direction they're gonna take that film, because I'm really looking forward to that film. And that leads me to number 1. In my opinion, the number 1 most underrated film that I've ever seen is Batman Forever. Another movie that gets a lot of crap for whatever reason. I have no idea. This is the first Batman film I ever got to see in theaters, and to this day, it remains one of my all-time favorite Batman films. And I'm one of the biggest Batman fans you will ever know. Yes, there are some problems with it, like the fact that Dick Grayson is a bit older, or a lot older than he should be, or the fact that Jim Carrey really isn't playing the Riddler, he's sort of playing himself, or how Two-Face is kind of stupid at times because once the Riddler shows up, he kind of dominates every other scene he's in, and he kind of plays like the Riddler plays the game of manipulating the main villain into thinking he's in charge when really the Riddler is in charge. But I think that all the scenes with Batman really worked very, very well. And in my opinion, I think Val Kilmer did just as good of a job with playing Bruce Wayne in Batman as Michael Keaton. And I know that may sound like blasphemy, but just sit down, watch the film, and you will find out that there's a lot of good things. And in many scenes, it even has probably one of the darkest scenes I've seen out of all the Batman films, even comparing it to some of the Christopher Nolan Batman films. So that is why it is the most underrated film that I've ever seen, and I will defend this movie till the day I die. And in so many ways, if I ever have kids of my own, this is going to be the first Batman film they watch. Long before The Dark Knight, long before Tim Burton's Batman, it is going to be Batman Forever. And those are my top 10 most underrated films that I have ever seen. Now, if you guys have underrated films that maybe I didn't mention on this list, please tell me in the comments down below. I really would like to know, because maybe you guys have a movie on your list that I haven't seen that might sound a bit interesting. And if you like this list video, feel free to like, comment down below, and please subscribe to keep track of my future movie, video game reviews, and topic videos like this one. And like always, thank you guys for watching. You're awesome, and I'll see you next time.